Welcome to the Women Inspired Podcast. I'm your host, April Seifert. There is nothing more powerful than a woman who is inspired to action, and that's my number one goal, to inspire you, my listeners, to take action in your lives. Each week, I get to interview some of the most inspiring women, and I'm bringing those interviews to you. Let's do it. Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of the Women Inspired Podcast. I am thrilled that you joined us this week because we have a powerhouse of a woman on as a guest. I'm so pumped for you to hear the incredibly powerful message that she is putting out there. I mean, it's literally applicable to your life. So this is a really exciting episode. Without further ado, before I get totally ahead of myself, I am so thrilled to welcome AmyK Hutchins to the podcast. Welcome, AmyK.
Oh, thanks, April. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. So we got connected actually through a previous guest of mine. For those of you who've been listening for a little while, Jenny Evans of Powerhouse Performance was a guest of mine. I mean, it feels like eons ago, but a number of months ago. And she actually reached out and recommended you. So we've got like this really cool train of powerful women like recommending each other. It's this really awesome situation, how we got connected.
It's very cool. Jenny and I are in a mastermind group together that she affectionately calls the Lady Balls. And so the four of us are all speakers and we all travel around the world. So we have many of the same pain points and the same highs. But it just shows you that when you get women together, you become exponentially more powerful. So I'm thrilled that she recommended me, and I'm excited to be here. She speaks so highly of you, April.
Oh my God. Amen to that. Getting powerful women together and like the whole is more than the sum of the parts. I love it.
For sure.
All right. So by way of us all getting to know each other, meaning the audience and me and everybody getting to know you, tell me a little bit about your background. Just help us get to know, you and where you came from and all of that good stuff.
I am a teacher at my core. I come from a family of teachers and professors and academia, and so it's in my DNA. So I started off as an elementary school teacher. I became a teacher trainer, and I then became a corporate trainer, and then I started my own training company. And then here, all these 18 years later of just my own company, I am still teaching. I mean, I am a lover of learning, both from the teaching and the student side. So at the end of the day, I still have a lot of that elementary school teacher in me.
That's a kind of a crazy journey because what I have to dive in and just ask right away. So you went from being an elementary school teacher, which, obviously people go to college, they get a degree that's, early childhood education or elementary education. Like this is a thing that people go to college for. And sometimes when that's the case, it can feel like, oh, okay, well, this is the thing I do for the rest of my life. Like I have no other options. This is the thing I do. But you've taken a bit of a path to get to where you are. When you got out of school, did you ever expect that you would be doing what you're doing today? And has it felt like a linear path, or is it more like, I don't know, meandering and sort of taking the next opportunity?
Definitely would never have predicted where I am today. If somebody had said, someday you're going to own your own company and you're going to have this entrepreneurial roller coaster ride, no way. I wanted to teach elementary school since I was knee high to a grasshopper. So it was just one of those things where I played school as a little kid until it was uncool to play school, if that makes sense, And then I go off and I was an intern in high school. And so I was teaching, fifth grade, really, when I was barely able to drive. And so it's one of those things where if you had said that elementary school degree is going to define you, I would have said yes at the time. And then after 9 years of teaching elementary school, I loved the kids and I had a passion for learning, but it was just sort of like, I'm done. Like, I'm ready to close this chapter. I'm ready to play bigger and bolder. And that doesn't mean from a judgmental place because I'm still teaching. It just means I was ready for a new adventure and a new way to apply it. So probably the best answer to your question is there are some very strong linear pieces. I mean, I still get jazzed about creating a lesson plan. It just now happens to be for 2,000 people online. It's just different. It's just different. But the meander is yes, because I found myself literally in Shanghai, China, teaching fifth grade to expat to 9 months later, looking at 250 sales consultants and $1 billion consumer product company and going, oh, okay, this was a change in my life. It was like, let me try to connect these dots. So yeah, so it's both linear and kind of a little cray cray.
That's awesome. I love that you'll, openly admit to the sort of craziness that is the journey that you followed, because sometimes, and we're going to get, next into the amazing work that you're doing and this incredible message that you have out there. But sometimes when, we meet people like you and we see people like you in the position that you're in, it can feel like, okay, one, you were always in that position. Like you just were like brought into the world in this successful, visible position that you're in. Or two, maybe we believe that there's a path there to get to the point that you're at, but we maybe don't see all of the left turns and face plants and trip ups and times that you've had to pull yourself back up and successes followed by and like all of the stuff that comes with that journey. So I appreciate that you're willing to share that it hasn't been the most linear thing and that you really, have had a bit of a journey throughout your time getting to the point that you're at.
I think that one of the things that's really important is for all of us to remember kind of that parable of leaving the hood. And what I mean by that is at some point you do have to say goodbye to those limiting beliefs and the limiting expectations that you can only be and then fill in the blank. And so I am not the only one over the age of 30 where somebody has walked up and said, well, how did you get here? I mean, like you were just, and then they fill in the blank. And so one of the jokes that I'll say is that every single one of us has elementary school limitations that we need to let go of. And so, in fact, it wasn't too long ago when one of the leaders that I was working with, he was like, yeah, the other day I ran into a childhood friend and like, how on earth did you get to be CEO of the bank? And he's like, I went to school and I worked really hard and I worked my way up the ladder and like now I'm 48 and this makes total sense. And I'm like, yeah, because everybody wants, glue sniffing Gary to be glue sniffing Gary from when they were 6 years old. Or, some woman will raise her hand and she'll be like, oh my God, you were glue sniffing Gary. I was Booger Barbara. And it was like, that's right. We were all 5 at one point, but who you were at 5 is not going to define who you are at 55 if you choose for it not to.
We're going to have so much fun. Oh my God, we're going to have so much fun on this episode. Okay, I'm totally ahead of myself. I want to make sure that everybody has an amazing grounding in the work that you're doing today. So tell us a little bit about that.
My background is in the brain. And before everybody shuts off, I promise not to get too dorky. So I really went back to school to study cognitive science, how we think, how we behave.
Yes, we're going to have so much fun today. I'm so excited.
And I love what I did. No. I'm passionate about it. I mean, it seems like it's so dorky until you realize that it affects everything.
Yes.
Like, so let's start with the fundamentals. So I really have like one core premise that I start everything on, and then it leads into some complex nuances. But I really do believe that life is happening one conversation at a time. And I think that we are responsible for the quality of these conversations. And so if life is happening one conversation at a time, then we're responsible for the critical thinking that's going on inside. We're responsible for our own triggers and reactions, our own behavioral responses. Are we fully present? Like the list goes on and on and on. And that leads to, self-awareness and emotional intelligence and this huge leadership thing that I'm all jazzed about. But at the end of the day, it is this conversation in this moment where I have to be fully present. And I just believe that you take it one conversation at a time.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Okay, so tell me a little bit about how that manifests in what you mentioned that you do some speaking. You mentioned that there are courses with 2,000 new friends on the internet who are taking these courses. Tell us a little bit about how you work with people, because now I'm really intrigued about this aspect of living life one conversation at a time. Like this is I'm super intrigued.
Well, I think a lot of us, and this is, hey, I'm guilty of this too. So this is not a hypocritical comment. Over time, we'll get Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, but it's in some domain expertise. Like we're a really great architect or engineer or accountant or doctor, or the list goes on and on. And what we forget is there's this whole other skill set out there with how we manage and lead ourselves. how we manage and lead others, how we interact and how do we better navigate that conversation with the difficult direct report or managing up to a boss or dealing with a board member or a spouse or significant other or a teenage girl, which is like a whole separate workshop. But it's like, one of these things that I love is to come back and say, okay, well, if it's happening one conversation at a time and you've got a domain expertise in accounting, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are ready for the meeting with these other people that are coming up. So you have a responsibility to prepare. You have a responsibility to do your due diligence. And sadly, in a 90-mile-an-hour world, most of us wing it. And we can get away with winging it because we're really, really smart until that one conversation comes back to bite you in the butt. And then you're like, ooh, probably should have prepared a little bit more for that one. And that's what I love. I love really setting people up for success. So I'm a big believer, if you're going to lead a team, instead of going in there and yelling at them and like, why can't they actually increase sales? How you frame your questions, how you get them to innovate and ideate, how you frame it, build that agenda. That's what I love to teach.
Interesting. Okay. So I mean, that begs the question for me. You're right. Most of us are winging it. Most of us are not thinking as intentionally as it sounds like you would hope people would think about the conversations they're having, about the context and the audience and the people they might be speaking to and the situation that they're coming from. What are some of the common, I don't know, pitfalls or just areas that get overlooked that you've encountered as you've worked with people over the years?
I think a really great place to start is the quality of the questions that we bring to a conversation. So if I were to say to you, and you can share anything that you want, anything that you feel comfortable with. If I were just to say to you, what's one of your biggest objectives this year? Like April, if you were to sit back and just say, okay, here's one thing I really want to accomplish or achieve this year, what would it be?
I really want to grow the ability of the podcast and some really fun, not to be cryptic, but really fun, amazing things that are branching out of the podcast. I want to grow it to be very large because I really, in my heart and soul, believe that it can help people.
Okay, so that's brilliant. And that's an answer that you already know. So in a strange way, as altruistic and as generous as your answer is, there's no critical thinking required. You just spit out something that you already know the answer to.
Yes.
So if I were to sit down with you as a business strategist and challenge you to raise the quality of your thinking so that you actually meet and exceed this goal, the very first question that I'm going to ask you is, how might we ideally grow a podcast for you to expand your reach and influence? Now, you can't answer that right now. It is not because you're not intelligent. It's because you actually have to sit down and think. If you're going to ideally grow this podcast in such a way as to have an exponential level of influence, then you'd have to sit back and say, okay, well, let me reflect on the podcasts that I've listened to that I believe are doing that. Let me reflect on my best episodes. Let me evaluate my current resources, personnel, time, energy, dollars, platform, and then let me predict how I would go forward in the next 30, 60, 90 days to kick ass and take names. And that is the highest form of thinking that you can do. So reflection, evaluation, and prediction change the game. And so my belief is if I'm going to serve others well, then I need to prepare for these conversations by just bringing one or two bigger, better, bolder questions to the conversation. I don't have to have 8,000 of them. I don't have to have interrogation tactics, but I need to show up ready to say, hey, you know what, April? If I really care about you and I want to serve you and I want a better outcome, then I'm going to have one or two really good questions that I've taken the time to spend maybe 3 to 4 minutes. It doesn't take long, but it does take 3 to 4 minutes to say, I care enough about you. I'm going to bring 2 questions to the table.
I'm sitting here a little bit dumbfounded because where my mind went is obviously, yes, the questions that you asked me about the podcast, like, yeah, I would have to sit down and critically think if I were going to do things differently than what I'm doing now to get to, expand the reach beyond where we're at today. What would I do? That would require critical thinking. And then I immediately went to, okay, well, what's the next? Because it sounds like you're talking about all conversations. So what's the next conversation that I'm going to be in? And how many times, like, we talk to people, close relationships with us, spouses, partners. We talk to close friends and family members and that type of thing. And I can 100% see where everything that you're saying also parlays over into those relationships and those conversations because it shows exactly what you said. It shows a level of commitment to that person and a level of commitment to the relationship to spend, like you said, 3 minutes thinking about what are a couple of things that I can ask this person that will either deepen our relationship, help them out, whatever it might be, but serve a purpose more than just walking in as a default.
And I think it's important to say that you are not going to do this for every conversation. I mean, that would become exhausting. But there are a lot of habits that we get caught into. Even the classic, we'll walk through the door and be like, hey, honey, how was your day? Fine, whatever. And then we realize, okay, one, there was really no exchange. Two, we're not connecting. There's no level of intimacy and building that relationship. So sometimes it's just sitting down at the table. And even though, again, it's a habit, it's the habit of the better question. And so one of the things that we do is we'll say, what was a highlight of your day, or what was the funniest thing of your day? Or you could even do the classic, what are 3 things that you're grateful for? And you can't have said anything you said in the last 5 days. It shifts the tone and tenor of a conversation to start with a more thought-provoking question.
Oh my gosh, totally. I want to shift gears just a little bit because I want to go back to something that you mentioned a little bit earlier. You mentioned this idea of leaving the hood, the idea that who you were when you were 5 is not who you need to be when you're 55 if you choose to do something differently. You brought up the idea of limiting beliefs and all of that stuff that goes along with them. I'm like, what's the word? There is a
garbage bag. Yeah, exactly.
Jesus,
the whole bucket.
Yeah. Hot mess that goes with them.
Yep.
You sound like you have a perspective on this. And I really want to hear your perspective on where those self-limiting beliefs come from, how they impact us, and how to get rid of them.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is turning into like an 8-hour call. I think that this is such a big topic for all of us because we're not alone. I mean, it's just, one of the myths, so maybe I'll start with the myth. One of the things that I think that all of us are told when we're little is that like you're going to grow up and you're going to be happy. Like life is going to get easier. And that myth is sold to us sometimes just in our own false assumptions of, we think that adults have more control because they certainly have more control than we do when they're telling us like where to go and what to do. And they make money and they have jobs. And so we see all of this as, oh my gosh, like when I grow up, I'm going to be incredibly happy. And then you realize when you get here, oh my God, it doesn't get easier. Mm-hmm. It gets harder.
Totally.
And so I think that the skills that have really helped me are the ones that I am now teaching. And so, like once the student, now the teacher, and it's not like I've learned these lessons. It's a lifelong journey. Like you're constantly being served up lessons. But I think that part of the letting go is that ability to have that conversation with yourself. And so one of the things that I was taught a long time ago is this concept of being a witness. And a lot of people call it different things. I think the person that I learned it from at the time was watcher. And then I kind of morphed it into my own tools and my own vocabulary. But the idea is not to argue with the fact that you're human. So let's just say something frustrates you, something makes you angry, something makes you jealous, something fills you with shame. The first thing that we try to do is we try to repress that. Mm-hmm. We try to say, oh, I should be bigger than that. I should be bigger. And I have found that it is the opposite that actually allows you to work through those feelings and those nuances faster. And that is to own it and to say, okay, I'm human. So the fact that I'm responding with a little bit of jealousy or a bit of frustration or a little bit of shame, that's normal. And so the first thing that I like to do is shift the conversation to say, okay, that was my reaction and that's human, but I am bigger than my reaction. I am the witness to this. And you know that you're the witness. Like you can visually see yourself rising above your reaction, above your behavior, above your emotion to say, okay, I am bigger than this. I can see this. So now let me start to work through this. Let me have a conversation with myself where I look at something and to me, it goes back to questions. So when somebody's anger gets triggered, so to speak, the first thing that I will ask a client is, okay, stop, honor the fact that you're human, and now be a witness to it. What's been broken? Mm-hmm. Like what assumptions have been made, or what boundaries or core values have been trespassed upon? And then after what's been broken, then I say, well, then what must be restored, and how might we restore it? And a lot of times, and this is, I know I'm on a tangent, but this is a good one. A lot of times women will say, I am unbalanced. and I am craving balance. And I will look at them and I will honestly say to them, okay, that's human, but I'm going to tell you right now, the more you search for balance, the more cray-cray you're going to be. Because you're going to realize it's elusive and you can't catch it. So there's two things you have to do. You have to substitute balance with prioritization, and you have to substitute balance with connectivity. So instead of trying to get balanced, I'll again have a conversation with yourself. Who or with what do you need to connect? And it's like, and you can just see the light bulb go off. It's like, you're right. I don't need balance. I need connectivity over here, or I need to get connected with this over here. And so it completely puts you back in control.
Holy cow. No, that was a totally worth it soapbox. I love it.
Yeah,
I agree. I could totally talk about that kind of thing for 8 hours as well, because I feel like it's something that I only realized probably in the last 5 years, I would say, that I even had. I mean, like, we grow up through our lives thinking that all of us probably feel this way, that not all of us, maybe a lot of us feel this way, that the way that we grew up, I mean, this is totally normal, right? Everybody grows up this way. Like, everybody has these sort of cultural assumptions and aspects to our family. But as it turns out, not everybody's situation is like that. Not everybody moves into adulthood with those same assumptions and those same ideas of what our capacity and our limits are. And, you know, we do bring those limiting beliefs into adulthood with us, and it's worth it. I will say over and over, it is worth it to figure out what those are that you have and work on them. And I mean, do the work that you have to do to push past them, because life on the other side of them, or life even moving through them, I would say, I don't even think I'm on the other side of the ones that are really difficult boulders for me. It is so worth it. So I love that you went down that path, because it's something that every single one of us struggles with in our own unique way. And it's so worth taking the time to figure it out.
Amen, sister. Amen. I mean, it's like, I would just sit here and say, like, preach it. Because one of the things that I think, and this, I am a late bloomer. I'm the first to admit that. Like, if I could go back and redo my 20s and 30s, it would be, you know, I mean, and it's not that I have regrets. So, I mean, I love that I have evolved to the point that I have, and that I'm still evolving. And so, you know, I just wish that I had known some of this stuff a lot earlier. And so I think that, you know, one of the things, and I'm probably going to be a little bit controversial when I say this, but it's just my truth. I think that women are extraordinarily competitive, mostly with other women. And I find that such a disappointment that we're still there, because I think that when women are the first to embrace each other and hug each other and say, look, you may look on the outside like totally amazing and that you have it all together. And I'm sure that you do have a lot of things together. And I know that in order for you to be in this spot, you had to have had a journey. Like, you have to have tales of adventure. Like, you have got to have some type of color in your profile that says, I didn't just show up this way. And that's what makes you unbelievably awesome and interesting and amazingly quirky and lovable. And so I think that if women would just kind of put the judgment down and say, hey, tell me your story. Tell me your tales of adventure. Like, you look like this badass now, and I'm sure you've got a tale to tell me how you got here. I think we'd be further faster than if we instead, you know, a lot of women will look at somebody and they'll be like, oh, you know, I could never approach her. She's got it all figured out. Well, I bet if you scratch the surface, she would be somebody you'd want to have a glass of wine with.
Yeah. No, I've definitely encountered that competitiveness. I've definitely had that competitiveness at, I would say, much more so earlier stages of my life. I'm embracing these amazing, I mean, this podcast has been transformative. I thought I was there at the beginning of starting this podcast, and I have now interviewed over 50 incredibly powerful, incredibly accomplished women. And every single time, if you know, the audience that's been following me from the beginning, or those who have just started, every single episode, every conversation, doesn't matter what they've achieved, every person has a vulnerable spot. Yes. Every person, again, has made mistakes that they're willing to own up to. And we mentioned Jenny Evans before, and I'm going to mention her one more time, because there's something that she said during her episode that literally I don't even have to go back to notes. It just echoes in my head, and it is so relevant here. Something she mentioned in her episode is that one of the gifts that we can give people in situations like that is our willingness to be vulnerable ourselves. Because when we do it, we're basically giving, maybe I walk into a room and for that moment on that day in that particular context, I'm the person who looks like they have their shit together. When I walk into that room and I'm willing to say, damn, I fell on my face this morning. Like, wow, that was bad. Or like, I set this goal and I didn't achieve it. Or this is how I struggled before. Or here's what I'm dealing with right now. When we show our vulnerability, we give permission to other people to do the same thing. And that grows those connections to other women, especially so quickly. And that bond becomes so strong because it becomes this like safe place where we can all completely be ourselves without this worry of, so much of the backlash that you can get in other dumpster fire places that some of us end up at.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's what's happening. And just trying to make sure I say this politically correct. So I love social media. So let me start with that. I really do love social media. And I think that social media has been phenomenal for multiple reasons. Everything from making people more aware of the atrocities that are happening around the world so that we can all take action, because I think that's really, really important. So we have information that's very quickly changing the world for the better. So I'm all for that. There's another perspective, though, of social media, and that is exactly what it is that you're talking about. It is a lot of noise out there where people aren't being vulnerable. So it's I post the picture when my makeup is perfect, or I post the picture when I win the award, or I post the picture when my kid has the lead in the play. Nobody that I've seen post the picture of, hey, I just scooped poop off the kitchen floor. Like it's, you don't get that selfie of, hey, my cat just yacked a fur ball up and here I am cleaning it up. And I think that one of the things that we have to be really careful of is something that I call the comparison condition. And I bring it up in my book. And this is not a sales pitch because I'm going to talk about it. You don't have to buy the book, but I do have a whole chapter on this because it is ubiquitous. And, America used to be number one in math and science. And I am serious about this. You go back not that long ago, and compared to all the other countries in the world, the United States rated number one in math and science. Well, you know what we rate number one in now? Anti-anxiety prescriptions. And again, and this is not a comment if you are on an anti-anxiety prescription, because you need it. And hey, better living through pharmacology, go for it. But my point is that the reason that I think our prescriptions are so high is because we hop on social media and we've just run a Costco. We're exhausted. We're drained. And all we see is our interpretation of perfection. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when we can start telling people, actually, you know what, this day was really hard. Or, this day just went sideways. Or I got blindsided over here. Or I just fell on my face. Or I made this mistake, but here's what I learned. That's when the truth surfaces. And I think that when truth surfaces, we feel connected. We feel more approachable. We feel like we're not alone. And that is actually very grounding.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I heard somebody say one time regarding social media that, we are all privy to the good, bad, and the ugly of our own lives. We see the exciting, amazing moments where we've achieved something, and we see the super boring ones where I'm like doing dishes and cleaning up after my dog in the morning and chasing, a toddler around trying to get her to put a shirt on for, 5 minutes. Like we see those moments that are not glamorous. And then we compare our full perspective of our own lives, which is mostly just sort of everyday stuff. We compare our perspective of our own lives to everyone else's social media highlight reel. Yep. And we come up short, of course.
Of course. Well, I mean, if, I always joke, if I'm going to go stand next to the Hollywood award-winning, actress when she's in full gown and makeup and I just rolled out of bed, I mean, it's like, oh, well, I thought I was, somewhat cute until I saw this photo, and so I think that, and again, this is really important too, because this is an inside job. And one of the things, and it's not about asking other people to stop posting perfectionism, quote unquote. It's about making sure that you're doing the work on the inside. So one of my favorite quotes is by a gentleman named C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis says, praise is inner health made audible. And I love that, because when I am genuinely excited for you, when I'm genuinely happy for you, when I can genuinely praise you and support you, I am coming from a place of peace. And so this is the work, and this is like everything that I do is when I work with leaders, I'm a business strategist, blah, blah, blah. It all comes back to really one thing. How are you invested in yourself? How self-aware are you? How grounded are you? How are those conversations going inside your head with me, myself, and I? Because I think that's where it starts and stops, is what's going on with you.
Absolutely. So, and you went in a direction that's exactly where my mind went. So we're talking about social media comparison, right? And we're talking about standing next to, some perfect Hollywood person when you're not looking your best, or maybe you show up to a lunch with a friend or somewhere with a coworker and you're just not at your best that day, and that person happens to be, or they appear that way on the outside. The relationship between those situations and the competition that you just talked about, I think it's interesting to think about how the inner work, exactly what you just mentioned, how that can either make or break whether those feelings of competitiveness crop up when we're feeling like we're not at our best. Because if you've really done that inner work, you can realize that that is a situational thing for both of you. I mean, that person doesn't, what's her name? Charlize Theron, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
She doesn't look like that every day at all. Probably most days she doesn't look like that. And it's a situational thing for her to look amazingly beautiful at the Oscars, as it is a situational thing for you to just sort of be in the dumps one day. But that inner work can help quell that competitiveness that could crop up if you're starting to look at these things as though they somehow define her and define you and define your standing in the world relative to each other.
Well, and I think that's a brilliant segue to then the more evolved perspective then. So let's just take it one step further, is that at some point we also need to be really comfortable that San's makeup and San's gown were probably even more beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that's when sometimes the most beautiful moments that I see in other human beings are when, all the masks are removed and the shells are removed and you're just sitting there and you're looking at this gorgeous human being and you realize, San's lipstick, you're stunning. San's hair all done up, you are stunning because you are exuding from a place of joy, or you're radiating happiness, or you're radiating confidence. And that to me is like the whole next level of, if I just show up totally grounded, it really sort of doesn't matter what I got on.
Oh gosh. Amen. Freaking man. I want to go to another place on social media social media and other places. I mean, it's kind of like social media and then everybody you hung out with when you were in elementary school. They can kind of lead you down this road. I'm gonna use your current situation as an example. You have a unique career, right? Like it's not one of the 5 jobs you could name when you were 5 years old, like doctor or teacher or fighter or whatever, librarian. I mean, you can name like 5 things. It's definitely not one of those. It's likely not the same as many of the people that you grew up around. And what that uniqueness and kind of choosing a different path or playing really big and pushing out of your comfort zone, what that can bring up sometimes is every troll from every corner of the internet or your life can somehow come out of the woodwork and make themselves known and really visible. These like terrible naysayers sometimes that crop up and feel like they are entitled to make a comment about the choices you made or the life you're living. And I see that becoming more common on social media as well. How? I guarantee it. I'm not even going to ask you whether you've dealt with naysayers. I'm just going to assume, because I've asked the question enough and everybody says yes. So I'm going to assume you're going to say yes. How do you deal with that, or how can people deal with that?
I'll start off candidly. I haven't always dealt with it well. I mean, sometimes you see things or you hear things or you read things that people say about you, and it hurts. I mean, and again, it's a human reaction to be hurt when somebody says something. You're like, you don't even know me. Like you're saying something based on your interpretation of a very shallow piece of my appearance, or one comment that I made is how you're interpreting me. And so let's just practice what we preach. That's a very human response, to be hurt. I am not super thick-skinned. Like, the one thing you will find, April, that I will not be doing for the rest of my life is politics. Like, I can just pretty much tell you I am knocked out for that. And at the same time, I think that it goes right back to, okay, and I have to witness that. Like, I have to be bigger than my initial reaction. So my first reaction is I'm a little hurt. Like, I want people to like me. I'm a teacher. I want my students to think, I'm a pretty good teacher. And I also know that their comment has nothing to do with me. It is a conversation they are having with themselves. So when people like if I'm speaking on stage, literally, if I'm speaking at a convention center and there are 5,000 people in front of me, they are all having 5,000 conversations and they are separate. And so one of the things that I remember is that if they're liking me, that's still a conversation that they're having with themselves. They identify with something. Maybe I trigger one of their core desires, or maybe I'm modeling something that they're working toward, or maybe I'm reminding them that they've actually already achieved that. And so they're feeling even better about themselves. So, but it's all with themselves. And so one of the things that I think when it comes to naysayers is just to remember that anything they say about you is just a reflection of what's going on with them. And so you kind of then have to go full 180 and say, so even if they like me, they only like me because they're feeling better about themselves. So again, it's a conversation that they're having with them. And then I guess one of the things, though, that I would also say is that sometimes the feedback, quote unquote, the naysayer might be giving you something constructive. And then you kind of have to say, well, where is the truth in that would help me evolve? And so I have for a little tiny person, I have a very big personality. And I never see that until I look in a photo. I mean, I always feel like I'm like towering over somebody. And then I'll see a photo and I'm like, oh, I was a foot shorter than they are. So I'm like that little chihuahua with a very big sense of self. But one of the things that somebody said to me, and this is going back now to when I was 19. So we are going back a long time. Somebody said to me, I find you overwhelming. And it was not a compliment. And so I remember being really hurt at first and being young. I was very young for 19. I was not today's sophisticated 19-year-old. And it hurt for a very long time, until one day I woke up and I thought, well, maybe that's a lesson. Like, maybe I need to be a better, like not dimming my light and not putting my light like on a diffuser, but just being better at saying, okay, maybe I need to just kind of rein in my energy or channel it better so that my message and my teaching is actually more effective and I don't put people off. And so those are the kinds of things where sometimes when people are negative, you can zip it up and not let it in, or you can say, is there a piece of this that I could take that would make me a better me?
That is not easy to do, but it's so worthwhile to do. It's that whole, like, I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but I am saying it's going to be worth it. It's that whole thing, because, when somebody comes at us with, I mean, even the best of intentions with criticism, our gut instinct can be to push that person away. And you're absolutely right. We absolutely can learn from those situations and then, place the rest of that where it belongs and, chalk it up to that person working on some things within themselves.
Yeah. And I think that, so just again, a real moment, it is a lot easier said than done. And I think that there are sometimes, I don't comment a whole lot on social media. And when I do, I would say 99.9%, because of the way that I'm wired, it's affirming, like it's supportive. So like if there's something out there that I'm, really upset about, or there's somebody that's got a message that I just totally disagree with, my tendency is to ignore, like to not engage. Like, okay, well, I don't have anything nice to say and I don't believe in this, so I'm just going to move on. This isn't the conversation I want to get caught up in. But then every now and then I feel like, well, you have to place a boundary, or maybe you have to protect your boundary and you have to push back a little bit. And we've had some of those moments, of course, in the career where you're like, okay, well, this was so egregious, I actually kind of have to defend myself because you're clue free on what's really going on. But I do think that at the end of the day, you have to step back and say, is this where I want to channel my energy? Like, is this, am I going to let them get a piece of my energy on this? Because again, most of the time, it has nothing to do with you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so as we're wrapping up today, you have such a wealth of knowledge and such a wealth of really, really useful information for people. And if I can ask you to leave us with something, like what is one practical thing that, whether it's a tip or a piece of advice or something like that, an exercise, something that people can use to either improve the conversations that they're having with people, improve that, self-confidence and self-image. We've talked about that a lot. Improve the relationships that they're having with other women. I mean, any of those things or anything else. This, one nugget of, practical knowledge that you can leave with people that they can apply.
I will keep it really simple. I think that every time that you are navigating a very difficult or critical conversation, just remind yourself that everything that comes out of your mouth will only do one of two things. It will help or it will hurt. And just remember that. So before you speak, before you get ready to react, just remind yourself that everything that you are about to say or do in that conversation can only do one of two things. It's either going to help or it's going to hurt.
I love that. It makes you think a little bit about, how, especially in important situations, how you might prepare, exactly as you were mentioning before. Okay, so I know that after this conversation, people are going to be really curious about where to find you. Where can people find you and your book and your work and all of that amazing stuff?
Well, we're going to keep it easy too, because I believe in that. So it's 4 letters. So it's my first name, AmyK, AmyK.com. So AmyK.com. And then you can learn all about us there. Obviously, I love what I do. We have a book. You can find the book, The Secrets Leaders Keep, on Amazon. You can get a link to that from our website. And then what I'm most jazzed about right now is that our next online program, which is Own Your Conversations, starts the cart and the whole registration and all that. AmyK.com/OYC, that will be up on April 25th. And Yay. So we're super excited. I know, I'm so excited. And so that's like taking everything that I've just said and like timesing it by 100, everything from the conversation at work to the significant to even changing the way we text to get a little bit more romance to our sales conversation, like everything under the sun, owning your conversations. And so this is an intense deep dive course, but I'm super excited because I'm a big tool girl. So I believe in tools, making it practical, making it simple.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my gosh, you guys, I encourage you to check out AmyK's website. It is awesome. I love the juxtaposition that you have on your website, by the way, about, succeeding in work and then actually being happy in your life and all of those. He said, I was just standing up and cheering as I was looking through it. And it's so exciting about your upcoming class. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I have one final question that I ask every single person who's been on the podcast. And that is for your favorite motivational song, because we are compiling a Spotify Power playlist of motivational songs that have been curated by all of my amazing, incredible, inspiring guests. So I have to ask for your contribution.
Oh, fun. Okay, so I'm a huge music junkie. So I have lots and lots of playlists, but one of the ones that actually gets my, my butt shaken and my boogie on is the Black Eyed Peas, I Got a Feeling.
Yes. That's awesome. I don't know how, I don't know that it's possible to put that song on and not do a little bounce dance to it.
Exactly.
It's not possible. It's such a good song. I love that contribution. It has been wonderful to get to know you. Jenny sold you short. Let me tell you. She told me you were amazing and awesome, and you've just blown me away. So I am thrilled to have you in the fold and to share your story and your message and the work that you've been doing with my audience. It has just been wonderful to get to know you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm truly humbled to be here because you have some extraordinarily inspirational women. So I feel honored to be included. So thanks.
Okay. Seriously, you guys, is she not awesome? I mean, honestly, is she not awesome? I was so thrilled to be connected to AmyK a couple of weeks ago as we were trying to set up her episode, but I am even more thrilled now having had the chance to talk to her and dig into her backstory and dig into the work that she is doing. Oh my gosh, I hope you loved this episode as much as I loved talking to her while we were recording. As always, there are a few things that I want to call out from this episode. Number one, I loved the approach that she talked about when, we might stumble and fall, or we might have a reaction to a situation that, we're not reacting in a way that we had hoped that we would. Maybe we thought we would be better. We thought we would react better. We thought we would perform better. And I love that she started from a place of saying, you know what? Let's just accept the fact that you are a little bit disappointed in your own performance, and accept the fact that it didn't go the way that you wanted to, and accept the fact that you are human. Oh my God, we expect ourselves to be superhuman all the time. And I love that she just called it out right there and boiled it down to the basics. Accept the fact that you are human. Second part of this, first thing that I'm going to call out, part B, I guess, is realize that the reaction that you may have had, or your performance, or whatever it is just an honest reaction that a human being would have. It just makes it so much more palatable to think, yeah, I lost my temper. I yelled at that person, or yeah, I didn't respond in the way that I had hoped I would. But you know what? I'm human, and sometimes people have those reactions. Or, yep, when I walked in and I saw Charlize Theron and she was in that beautiful gown and I looked like, garbage that day because I just didn't have time to even take a shower, I'm going to just admit that I was jealous. That's okay. Those things are human. And I just love that she's willing to call it out. And then be a witness to it. And this is something that has taken me so long to actually really understand, because it's a really deep concept and I feel like I'm still grappling with it on a daily basis. Our reactions are not us. They are just reactions. We can make a different decision the next time. We don't always have to react in the same way, but they are not us to our core. So just be a witness to the fact that you had that reaction, observe it, and decide to do something differently the next time. Second thing that I want to call out, I love that she talked about some of the, tendency for women to be competitive with each other. Now, I definitely can think of just dozens and hundreds and bazillions of situations where women have been super supportive to one another, and that is a beautiful thing. But I think if we are all being honest, we have all experienced a time in our lives, or at least some fleeting circumstances, where we have not been supportive of another woman because we felt like we were in competition with her, whether we actually were, or most cases were not. It is just one of those things that happens to us. Again, we're human. But what I love is we made this interesting linkage back to comparison and how that can really fuel some of this competition between women. We look at each other and we think, wow, she really has her shit together. She's really got this all under control. She's really got a handle on it. She's really performing at a high level. And the truth of the matter is, that's that person's highlight reel. That is situational. Whether that person is coming in that day and killing it, or whether they're coming in that day and they might be a basket case, that is situational to that person, as well as your situation where you might feel like you have it all together one day, or maybe you feel like a basket case that day. That is also a situational, not permanent thing. So I love that we had that conversation. I love that it parlayed into this idea of being vulnerable with other women. It can feel scary to make the first vulnerability move, to be the first person to sort of bare your soul a little bit. You don't have to feel like you have to do it with everyone, but with those people who you really want to connect with, it is amazing how a small amount of vulnerability can really deepen that relationship. And I'll highlight the episode with Jenny Evans one more time. If you go back into my history, I'll actually link to it on this show notes page. It's worth listening to because we got into a really deep conversation about the impact of being vulnerable around other people and how much permission it gives them. So I love that it came up again, and I adore that it came up in a conversation that I had with one of Jenny's friends. So cool. Last thing that I want to highlight is this idea of other people's opinions. Now, we got into that conversation because I asked a question about naysayers. But what was so cool about the way that AmyK responded to it is that she talked about both sides of the coin. She talked about naysayers for sure. People who come in and they spew their nastiness all over the place, and you can tell that there's something going on with them, but they're bringing it in and they're putting you down or your work or your opinions or your whatever it is. They're putting those down, and it feels heavy sometimes. And it's just, people come in and they bring that negativity with them and they put you down. And I love that she went to a place where she said, that is them working on some things for themselves, and the conversations that they're having inside their head don't really have anything to do with you. Now, there are situations where you can learn from people, and I love that she brought that up as well. But largely, when somebody is coming in just for the sake of being a troll or being a naysayer, that's just a conversation that person is having with themselves. I love, though, that there is the flip side of that conversation as well from AmyK. She talked about as well when people are praising us and when they're saying the most amazing things, that's also a conversation that they're having in their head. And here's why, and it's not to discount it. It's not for you to say, oh, don't take that as a compliment. Don't use that to feel good about yourself. It's not to say that you should completely cast that off. But so many of us, I'm raising my hand. I am thumping on the desk right here. And I'm going to be the first person to be vulnerable and say, this is 100% me. I have to work hard in this area. So many of us are swayed emotionally, drastically by the feedback we're getting from other people, whether it's positive or negative. And the difficult thing about that is that means that your emotional state and your feelings about yourself are very dependent on the context that you're in, the people that you're around, and how those people are doing that day and the conversations they're having with themselves. And that's not a stable way to build self-confidence and self-esteem. I'm speaking from seriously personal experience here. This is something that I work on a daily basis. When somebody gives me a compliment, unabashedly, I will say thank you, but I have to remind myself, like, okay, this is one data point and this is one piece of evidence, as is the negative side. How do I feel about myself? How do I think I did in that situation? I think I did really great too. Great. High five me. Good job me. But, those pieces are just, one element to take into consideration. But the stability of how we're doing emotionally should come from within. I so hope you guys loved this episode, and I hope you will check AmyK out on her website, amyk.com. Before we close out today, I want to say thank you to my producer, Cameron Hill. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone else who might benefit from this content. And if you have a moment, click the link in the episode description to leave me a rating and a review on iTunes. It would mean so much to me. Finally, if you're ready to start making changes in your life to align your day with your goals and your values and what fills you up, I have a free tool to help you get started. Sign up at aprilseifert.com to get immediate access to my free Life by Design life blueprinting tool. I designed this tool using theory from the fields of psychology and design thinking, and it will absolutely help you get clear on the areas of your life that are serving you and those that aren't. Clarity is a critical first step before you can design your own best life. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Until next time, have an inspiring week.